This genius architect set out to save the world from ugliness. He wanted to unlock the secret of what makes a place feel authentic, alive, humane and beautiful. His name? Christopher Alexander. He unfortunately passed away in 2022, but his legacy may shape the 21st century more than most architects ever will. His books, A Pattern Language and The Timeless Way of Building, sit on the shelves of architects around the world. And in a surprising twist of fate, his thinking helped give rise to a new way of programming, using the power of design patterns. So I traveled all the way to California to learn everything I could about this remarkable man. His life, his buildings, his ideas, and the movement he began. We even got rare, exclusive access to one of the homes he designed. But what exactly makes his ideas so revolutionary? What did he discover about beauty, life, and design that still resonates today? Did he really create a kind of theory of everything for architecture, cities and beyond? Let's find out. I'm boarding a plane to San Diego to meet a friend who invited me to make a video on Christopher Alexander. The friend I'm visiting is Richard Erganian. I met him at an IMCL Congress. Richard had known Christopher Alexander personally, as he owns a magical place in Fresno, California designed by Christopher, the Vineyard's organic farmers market. After some days in San Diego to acclimatize, we traveled to Fresno to see the market. It's a beautiful morning and I wake up early to see the market sellers getting ready. The wooden structure of the market hall rises in a gentle curve above the gravel of the parking lot. The location of the market is somewhat odd. It's located right next to Blackstone Avenue, which is the opposite of the kind of urbanism I try to encourage on this channel. But the market hall itself adds a lot of charm in this ocean of big box stores, strip malls and parking lots. It's enveloped in plants and flanked by cypress trees that Richard planted himself. In the golden morning light, with the market slowly coming to life, this market is truly a magical place.
We had 7 seasons at the farmers market before we moved into here. I first approached a local architect to design me an arbor, and when he got it back, and I says, well, gee, this looks like a carport. I says, you know, we can't have a carport like this over here. It makes the place look ugly. And I just left it for a while. And I took a class in urban design, and one of the books that were assigned was Pattern Language. And it didn't take me but a half hour of flipping through the pages of Pattern Language. I says, this guy is talking my language. I says, I understand what he's trying to do. And I looked at the back of the book. He teaches at UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley is about 3 hours north of Fresno. I said, let me call him, see if he'd do a farmer's market job. He said yes. You know, I says, let's talk about it. Come on up to Berkeley and we'll talk about it. We had coffee in the kitchen of his house, and I described the market. He says, well, let's make an appointment. I'll come down to the market and talk to your growers. And he went through and talked to every one of our growers. We had about 20 growers at the time. And then that's how we arrived at this layout.
As you might know, I'm concerned with the built environment and how it makes people feel. Especially how we can be uplifted by beautiful environments or depressed by boring and ugly places. However, there are many other problems that people are facing today, like stress or trauma. And these kinds of mental health issues have only gotten worse in the last few years. To make matters even worse, many today are refusing to seek help for their problems. They either see it as something for problematic people, never discussed mental health in their home, or even believe emotions are a sign of weakness. If any of this sounds familiar, you're certainly not alone. 62% of adults believe that societal attitudes discourage people from seeking help in mental health. Despite growing up in an era of mental health awareness, 37% of Gen Z believes that those who seek therapy are mentally weak. In honor of the Mental Health Awareness Month, BetterHelp is the paid partner of this video, and I'm working with them to stop the stigma around mental health support and encourage more people to get support from a credentialed therapist. Therapists listen, ask questions and help you see things from new perspectives. They can give you advice and techniques to make positive changes in your life. And BetterHelp's mission is to make starting therapy as easy as possible. If you think you could benefit from speaking with a credentialed therapist, click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/aestheticcity to match with a therapist. Using my link also gets you 10% off your first month of therapy. And now let's get back to the video. So, who was Christopher Alexander? Christopher Alexander was born in 1936 in Vienna, but his journey took him far beyond his birthplace. He studied architecture at Cambridge University, a place steeped in history, where he was exposed to both classical traditions and emerging ideas in design and mathematics. Alexander became increasingly aware of something troubling. Modern architecture felt lifeless. It lacked the depth and warmth that traditional architecture had achieved for centuries. But rather than simply returning to traditional architecture, Alexander wanted to understand the deeper process that led to beauty and livability. He basically wanted to reverse engineer beauty and life, which is no small task. He initially thought that urban design could be systematized into a clear hierarchy, like an algorithm, guiding design choices at every level. But then he realized he had made a crucial mistake. In 1965, Alexander published A City is Not a Tree, a book in which he argued that real cities do not function in neat hierarchical structures like a branching tree. Instead, urban design decisions overlap, intertwine and influence each other in complex ways. For example, placing a bench in a park might seem trivial, but it affects how people use the space, how they interact, and even the overall atmosphere of the neighborhood. Small changes have ripple effects, shaping the larger environment. So how could this complexity be harnessed instead of ignored? In the 1970s, Alexander took a bold step. He was offered the opportunity to design a new village in India from scratch. But as he studied the challenge, he realized something. He wasn't ready. The complexity of designing an entire village was overwhelming. Instead of forcing a solution, he walked away. But he didn't see this as defeat. Instead, he dedicated himself to developing a system that could help solve design problems at all levels. The result? A pattern language. This book introduced the concept of patterns. In A Pattern Language, Christopher Alexander describes patterns as problems which occur over and over again in our environment, and then describes the core of the solution to that problem in such a way that you can use this solution 1,000,000 times over without ever doing it the same way twice. For example, take pattern 179, alcoves. An alcove is a small, partly enclosed space attached to a larger room. It gives people a place to withdraw, focus, or talk quietly while still being part of the overall space. This pattern appears in many homes. It is always shaped a bit differently, but it always does the same thing. It's a semi-private retreat within a social space. The materials, culture, climate and habits of the users shape how it looks, but the essence of the alcove is always the same. This is exactly what Alexander is trying to describe. The pattern isn't the form, it's the relationship. So whether you build an alcove in Delft, Kyoto or Oslo, it always responds to the same human need. The book A Pattern Language doesn't stop at the level of a building though. It has patterns that describe problems and their solutions from the city level all the way down to the design of homes. It tries to be universal by looking at how humans naturally behave. And it turns out that many similarities pop up between cultures and how they use spaces. And these clever, natural, universal solutions are captured in patterns. It's this what makes A Pattern Language such a powerful and popular work. Around the same time Alexander was developing these ideas, a very different kind of design problem was emerging in Silicon Valley. Software engineers were facing enormous challenges. Their programs were growing more complex by the day. They needed systems that could adapt, scale, and still feel intuitive to the people using them. That's when some of them stumbled upon Alexander's early work. Programmers discovered that Alexander's principles were ideal to solve the challenges they faced in writing software. They began applying his concepts of patterns and iterative design to their own field. By the 1990s, software engineers had taken Alexander's idea of design patterns and turned them into what's today known as the Gangs of Four patterns, which is a foundational part of object-oriented programming. From apps to websites to the software behind this very video, Alexander's thinking helped shape the digital world, not because he set out to, but because his insights turned out to be universal. But here's the irony. While the tech world embraced his principles, the architecture world largely ignored them. Modernist architects dismissed Alexander as nostalgic, too focused on beauty and livability, ideas that didn't fit their vision of progress. Yet, some people believed in him, and he got to build some real projects. Like the first house he ever designed, for Andre and Anne Sala, the Sala House. a home designed using the principles of a pattern language. The Sala House brings Christopher Alexander's philosophy to life. More than just a structure, it's an organic extension of its inhabitants, designed to adapt and grow in harmony with their needs and experiences. And the interior is unique. There's all these cozy corners, alcoves, a paradise for kids. Although I wouldn't call the exterior of the house a classical beauty, it's the application of the patterns in the interior that are very special. It feels deeply authentic and pleasant, with a wonderful view of the bay. The home came with extensive construction drawings and even a booklet explaining all the patterns that were applied in this house, organized per room. It was very cool to see. So if the patterns were applied successfully in this house, why isn't everyone using these patterns today? When a pattern language was released, it was an immediate success. People were inspired to apply Alexander's ideas to their own projects, from urban planning to home construction. But as the results started coming in, something was off. The deep, rich beauty that Alexander sought was still missing. He realized something crucial. Patterns alone weren't enough. Alexander had made a critical assumption that anyone using a pattern language would instinctively understand how to weave patterns together in a holistic way. But instead, many were applying the patterns mechanically, as if following a checklist, rather than deeply engaging with the essence of design. This was a turning point. If patterns alone couldn't create beauty, then what was missing? Alexander spent the next 27 years searching for the answer. The result was his magnum opus, The Nature of Order. This monumental work explored a new concept, wholeness. Here it gets a bit more abstract and difficult, but bear with me. Alexander proposed that all spaces are made up of centers, interrelated elements that together create a sense of life and harmony. He identified 15 fundamental properties that contribute to this wholeness, including levels of scale, strong centers, boundaries, alternating repetition, positive space, local symmetries, and many more. Together, they explained why certain places felt alive, while others felt cold and disconnected. A key insight was emergence, how complexity arises from simple rules. A bit like Conway's Game of Life. Alexander's system showed how beauty and livability emerge when design responds to real human needs. There are more buildings by Christopher Alexander, one of which I visited, a homeless shelter in San José. Due to the privacy of those living there, I couldn't enter and film, but from the outside it does look intriguing. Then there's the Aishin campus in Japan, the West Dean Visitor Center in England, and a number of other projects. I hope to visit more of his projects in real life, but anyone can come close to his work by reading his books, which give you a great sense of his character and unique vision. Christopher Alexander's work was about more than just architecture. It was about the fundamental principles that shape the world around us. For some, his work was too esoteric, while for others, his books, especially a pattern language, are highly instructive in everyday practice. Personally, I believe that any homebuilder would do well to closely study it. Today, Alexander's influence is still growing. Architects, urbanists, and designers are rediscovering his ideas, applying them to create places that truly feel alive. There's a growing movement of people who want to further study, spread, and apply Christopher Alexander's ideas. There even is a postgraduate program for architects, builders, and placemakers called Building Beauty, which explores the principles of the nature of order and how to apply it in design. I'll include a link to it below. Some might think that Alexander's aim of reverse engineering beauty was impractical and a form of reinventing the wheel. Why not just use building traditions, in which much of his patterns and wholeness are already integrated? I believe that even if that is the case, it doesn't mean that his work isn't valuable or transformational. By using his theories, we can get a couple of steps further, especially when we're not exactly sure what to do in an unknown setting. His theories might explain why building traditions work so well in the first place, and can greatly improve modernist designs, or even traditional ones that simply don't work well. For anyone who cares about designing humane places where you feel alive and pleasant, I strongly recommend reading his books and applying his principles whenever possible. Because when we design with life in mind, we create places that people love. And that might just be the thing our cities need most today. If you know someone who must know about Christopher Alexander, please share this video. And if you like it, please consider subscribing or becoming a patron. Thank you for watching, thank you to my patrons for supporting, until next time.